All right, today we're going to talk about the 4 pillars of growing a successful freight brokerage, right? And so we're going to talk about these pillars and then we're going to kind of break them down a little bit, right? So the first pillar is people, right? People is always going to be the first pillar. People are the core fundamentals of any successful business. So that means, you need to understand how to find good people, right? You need to understand how to hire good people. You need to invest in good people to retain them. You need to train them properly, and you need to support them. So people, you will never grow a highly successful freight brokerage by yourself. There's this old adage, teamwork makes the dream work. And without a team, there is no teamwork. It's not about you, right? It's all about them. It's about the team. So as you grow, when you first start, it's you standing alone, just like I was back in 2003. I didn't have any employees. It was just me, a computer and a phone. That's how I started. And then I hired my first employee. And then I hired my 10th employee. And then I hired my 20th employee. And then I hired my 51st agent. And then I hired my 10th agent. And I hired my 50th agent, right? And that's how the company grew. But had I not learned and understood the value of people, hiring good talent, finding, hiring, and retaining good talent, I would have been a shell of what we've been able to do. Maybe I would have grown a couple $1 million brokerage, maybe, but ultimately, I would have never had the type of success that we were blessed to have, growing a brokerage that did over $80 million a year and personally doing over $200 million as a freight broker, right? Without people, that would not have happened. So that is a pillar that you have to understand. Hiring, training, supporting people that are going to help you grow your business. That's pillar number 1, all right? Pillar number 2 is strategy, right? So some questions and topics in and around strategy include, what is your niche, right? You know that I'm a big believer in riches are in niches. So what is your niche? Are you in produce? Are you doing steel? Are you doing heavy haul? Are you doing cross-border? Are you focused on hazmat? I mean, what is your niche? Those are a few niches, right? So what is your niche? What's your customer acquisition strategy? How are you going to acquire customers? How are you going to start a dialogue? Are you focused on cold calling? Are you going to leverage social selling and something like LinkedIn marketing, which I did very heavily? Are you going to do cold email? Are you going to go and do outside sales? Are you focused on referrals? I mean, these are all questions about your customer acquisition strategy. And then another really interesting question about strategy is, what makes you different? What makes you stand out from the crowd? People, shippers don't want just another freight broker that's going to call them up and beg them for freight. So what makes you different? So those are 3 questions. What's your niche? What's your customer acquisition strategy? And what makes you different? So that's not the only thing around strategy, but those are a few questions that you might want to ask in and around the second pillar, which is strategy, right? So what is your strategy? The third pillar is execution. Now, what I mean by execution is this: your ability to execute on your strategy, right? So it's the day-to-day execution of your business strategy. So things that are really important, the three pillars of execution are effective communication, right? The ability to communicate effectively with your team, with your partners, with your customers, right? With any stakeholders in the business, your ability to communicate with them effectively. The second part of that is systems and processes, right? So solid systems and processes that are a part of any business. In the freight brokerage business, one of the primary systems that we use is called a transportation management system, a TMS, that helps us manage our freight from cradle to grave, right? From order all the way through to delivery, right? So a TMS is an example of a system, right? And then there are processes, for example, processes like vetting carriers, setting carriers up in your system, There are processes around paying your carriers and around invoicing your customers. These are all the types of systems and processes that I'm referring to. And then the third part of that is evaluating your performance. So understanding and evaluating your performance as it relates to the execution, right? The other two parts, the communications and the systems, and then evaluating how well you're executing on your strategy, on your plan, right? So ongoing evaluation, and some of that evaluation is done daily. Some of that evaluation is done weekly. Some of that evaluation is more focused on quarter or annually. Depends upon your goals, depends upon your plan, right? And so that gives you, that's the third pillar, which is execution. I broke that down a little bit for you. And then the last pillar is cash, right? You always hear everybody say cash is king, right? Well, cash is great, but it's really not cash that's king. It's cash flow that's king. That's a whole nother lesson here. But ultimately, there are three things I want you to think about right now as it relates to cash, as it relates to your business. One is other people's money, leveraging other people's money. In the freight broker business, that's all about factoring, right? Leveraging factoring, finding a factoring partner that can help you with cash flowing carrier payments and some of your operational costs as a startup. Or if you're in high growth mode where where the cash flow, you need a partner to help you support that. That's all about factoring, right? So that's something you might want to consider around cash. The second part is managing your cash flow, right? Making sure you're paying your carriers. If you are using a factoring company, they may actually pay the carriers, which would be very helpful because they'll have a process and the ability to do that. But cash flow, managing your cash flow, the cash in and cash out, making sure you always have positive cash flow, and how to ensure that you have positive cash flow, right? So cash is important. Those are, and again, that'll go back to other things like processing payments and collecting payments and all those sorts of things. And then the third part is reinvesting profits into your business for growth, right? So this is a mistake I see a lot of freight brokers making. And the mistake is really this, they, for every $100 they make on a load, they try to pull $101 out and put it in their pocket. They don't reinvest their profits into the business for growth. Those profits that you make on every single load, of course, they need to sustain you as a person, as a business, to try to keep the lights on and the bill collectors away. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to learn how to reinvest your profits. And you're going to be reinvesting your profits into those three things: people, strategy, and execution, which are the other three pillars. That's where the cash is going to go. Okay. So those are the four pillars, right, to growing a successful freight broker or freight agency business. One is people. Two is strategy. Three is execution. And four is cash. Right? So I broke those down into kind of some subsets that should help you to understand the fundamental and the core components of how to grow a successful freight brokerage. Now, a lot of those topics I've covered in different trainings, and a lot of those topics are covered in my Freight Broker Bootcamp online course, which again, you can check out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com. I hope you guys enjoyed the four pillars of growing a successful freight brokerage or freight agency. If you guys are curious about getting started as a freight broker or freight agent, make sure you check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. We have a couple different new memberships, including a platinum lifetime membership that gives you lifetime access, lifetime support, very cost effective. We're well known as the most cost effective and comprehensive online freight broker training program. Been around for over 10 years, trained over 8,000 brokers, and we have a 60-day, 100% money back guarantee. Check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you enjoyed this, give me a 10 in the comments below. 1 to 10, rate this training. 1, this was horrible, Dennis. You suck and you shouldn't be training people. 10 meaning this was ideal. You learned a ton and you really appreciate it. So I hope you guys have an awesome day, an awesome week, a profitable month, because we're now in August. And we will see you next week, Monday at noon, like every Monday, for the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Have an awesome day, and we'll talk soon.